Pinball Hunter D, Special Win Bit, by Justin M. Bailey. Prelude. Creatures of the Night. What high scores they make! Damon Hunter had haunted and had occasionally feasted upon some of the finest, most infamous of corners and dwellings that the modern age had to offer. Paris during the Terror, London during the impoverished, soot-soaked industrial age of Queen Victoria and Jack the Ripper, and of course, L.A. during the O.J. Simpson trial / Rodney King riots. He was sitting on a rooftop eating popcorn as all of Hollywood burned. Yet strangely enough, as modern haunts went, perhaps his most favorite, or at least most current, haunt turned out to be nothing like the rest. No, there was nothing, virtually nothing infamous or notorious or even all that noisy, especially during the off-season, about the tiny, sleepy, little upstate New York tourist town simply known as Jefferson Lake. Jefferson Lake was quite simply one of the New World's most oldest of tourist destinations, and nothing more. But what truly fascinated, interested, and satisfied Damon Hunter most about Jefferson Lake was not just the majestic Adirondack scenery that most certainly rivaled that of the Carpathians back home, not to mention that there was a whole lot less gypsies and wolves, nor was it the fact that Jefferson Lake had always drawn the most variety of people to its summer shores. Everyone from wealthy, Manhattan-based one-percenters to upstate couples, from Plattsburgh to Poughkeepsie to Rochester, juggling 3 kids and just as many jobs, all came to her summer shores for a well-deserved holiday. Variety was never a problem whenever Damon felt like sitting down for a well-deserved midsummer snack. But rather, it was Jefferson Lake's abundant population in a rarer-than-rare, all but extinct pastime, just like him, and that was the beautiful game of games forever known as pinball. Damon Hunter absolutely loved pinball, and he loved it and sought it with a ferocity that rivaled that of virgin blood and Persian rugs. Somehow, in a nation and a culture and an entire flipping world where arcades were dwindling and declining, even more so than the creatures of the night ever did, Jefferson Lake somehow had on its hands, on its main street tourist strip, not 1, not 2, not even 3, but count them 5. 5 fully functional video game arcades. Video arcades that were brimming, absolutely brimming, with Flippy Bird, yes, and Deal or No Deal machines, but also with over 30 years of glorious pinball. In a modern world so hopelessly lacking in fangs, in bite, so to speak, pinball was a leisure time activity that forced you to battle with something that centuries ago people used to have to battle with every single day. While waiting for your laundry to dry or your bowling friends to gather over a well-deserved beer, you'd pop in a couple of old quarters into an old Bally or a Williams if you were lucky. You'd pull the plunger and you'd do battle with something you were never ever meant to beat. The ball would fire, there'd be some boops, some bops, spinners, ramps, and bumpers along the way, and maybe even a lucky break or 2. But the game always ended inevitably the same way, didn't it? It always ended with you, the player, becoming drained and done. Something that Damon Hunter knew a whole lot about. In short, pinball was the only game around that forced modern players to wrestle with their own mortality. Something that even Damon Hunter, at no less than a near 500 years of age, had to wrestle with from time to time. In short, the modern world needed pinball. But that was before his most infamous and repugnant of uncles would once again rise from his grave to do what he had always historically done best: take a big shit on that which everybody loves most while simultaneously stabbing it, impaling it right through the chest pump once and for all. In the foul year of our Lord 2013, for the 3rd time in its existence, all of pinball was about to go extinct. Even worse than a Mare LaGuardia and a Hurricane Ivan combined, if Damon Hunter and his pinball cohorts could not find a way to stop it. Chapter 1. Those who drain. Wherever Damon went, wherever he settled in these United States, Damon always made sure to work a handful of odd jobs to always help him blend in and keep a low profile. After all, as far as Jefferson Lake was concerned, who would ever guess in a million years that the nice-looking young gentleman, Damon honestly perpetually never looked a day past 23, that helped you get extra pillows from housekeeping, or helped your kids cash in their skee-ball tickets at the end of a long family vacation, was in fact a centuries-old black-hearted creature that was capable of feeding on your rotten little brats as easily as one orders a Domino's pizza or something from Uncle Jeff Bezos. But this was not the only reason why Damon worked such odd jobs around Jefferson Lake. Heck no! No, Damon did not just keep his ancient eyes perpetually pinned to the ground to simply keep ahead of any and all Van Helsing and Simon Belmont wannabes out there. No, Damon also worked such positions because they frankly often led to some really fantastic pinball deals. The kind of pinball deals that would blow your mind! Heck, half of Damon's personal collection had been entirely procured because everyone around the lake knew him, liked him, he only fed on tourists after all, and whenever any of them heard anything remotely pinball related, well, who do you think was the first creature they talked to? Sometimes Raymond, sure, but mostly to him. Somehow, Damon had actually once scored a meteor and a Stargate for only $150 in the same week. And if that does not make you pinball jealous, then you know absolutely nothing about pinball. You will never ever get one pin, let alone 2 pins made after 1979 for $150? The meteor was this old lady who was simply happy to free up some room, some space, as it were, for a new piano. And the Stargate, one of Gottlieb's last, was this divorced lady so blinded by her hatred of her honky-tonk, roadhouse-owning husband that she simply didn't know or care what the thing was worth. True, nearly 20 years' worth of Genesee cream ale had been spilled all over it, and true, at least 5 million packs of Marlboro cigarettes had in fact been put out on its sides before smoking in bars had been banned in New York, but other than that, other than the wretched smell of Jenny cream ale, and frankly, that stuff smells terrible even when it's fresh, it was almost completely functional, and even if it wasn't, well, who the heck could ever say no to a 90s pen, even a Gottlieb? May it rest in peace. At the end of its run for $100, as far as Damon was concerned, you could keep all of your Craigslists and your eBays and shove them right up your impalement chute. If you ever wanted a good deal on anything, or if you simply wanted to know what your enemies were up to, word on the street and reputation would always supersede all that other stuff. Word of mouth would always be the most powerful social network of all time. But even Damley Freely had to admit that some of these word of mouth leads could most certainly lead to some wild goose chases indeed. Wild goose chases with a capital D. For the third time in one night, Damon, the midnight manager, was restocking the main lobby cooler in front of the main lobby desk of the Fort William Henry Hotel, with another assortment of random sodas, bottles of water, and Gatorade that were all the colors of the rainbow. Not that Damon knew a whole lot about rainbows these days. Damon genuinely felt a little bad, he supposed. He supposed he genuinely felt bad that not one of these beverages would become remotely cold enough for purchase before the late-night guests ever got their hands on them. But then again, perhaps this particular group of late-night guests would not even notice or care at all. From May to the end of June, and from August to October, basically the 2 bookends of the summer vacation season, the Fort William Henry Hotel hosted maybe 60 large weddings a year, and they always got pretty rowdy, as upstate New York weddings tended to do. Woohoo! Yeah! However, the late-night tenacity, and if you will forgive him, the overall thirst of this particular June the 17th wedding was quite impressive indeed. After all, it was already almost 3 a.m. and the large amount of wedding party guests were still going strong, shot for shot, and sometimes Gatorade for Gatorade. The main wedding reception in the main ballroom had already closed down around midnight, But at least half of the entire wedding party was still keeping Yancey, the outside bartender, just outside the lobby's rear double doors that would lead you to the pool, the gardens, and the breathtaking view of the lake itself, busy past the wee hours. Still, though the wedding party may yet have a half hour to their name before Yancey, the outside bartender, mother of two and part-time bus driver, finally decided to call it quits, special wedding day or not. But in the meantime, Damon continued his quest to answer the phone, provide some extra sheets to parents of small children who had unceremoniously wet their bed, and to keep his main lobby cooler stocked for every wedding party guest who had finally decided to call it quits. "Oh my stars, I am drained," said the youngest of bridesmaids while piling up her random assortment of plastic bottles to be charged to her room onto the lobby counter, as Damon did his best not to smile about this. Damon had perhaps filled the machine for the fourth and final time of that evening, when suddenly from behind him, Damon heard an old French familiar voice saying, "Hello, Damon," and a slight smile could not help but grow across his face. After all, the French had always been some of Damon's most favorite people, and not just to drain, but for good conversation and good times as well. After all, French had always been the language of brothels back in the day, and though people often forget that brothels were essentially the Chuck E. Cheeses of their time, if you wanted to get off on a little more than some bagatelle, you really needed to know a little French. "Manuel Lankar, hello," Damon said, turning around and greeting the tired old man with a slight bow and a nod that one might have expected from an old Paris hotel. "A very good evening to you," Damon said, while waiting to see what the matter was. "Is it?" Manuel said with a near-century-old mischievous grin. "I see all the rednecks are still out drinking their lives away. I wonder how much they will all drink, the happy couple, when they finally get their divorce, no?" "What makes you think they're getting divorced?" Damon asked with a laugh. "None of them are drinking like it is a wedding. They drink like it is an Irish wake of some kind. None of them are celebrating the happy couple, Damon. They are mourning. They are mourning this matrimony disaster. I bet they have already set up a secret betting pool as to when all the adultery games begin. Him the maid, her the brother." And most certainly Damon smiled at this. After all, how could anyone not enjoy such an old French frump? "Are they keeping you up at night?" Damon inquired. He highly doubted it. After all, Manuel always stayed all the way up in the suite on the fourth floor. But all Manuel would have to say was, "Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely." And Damon would have immediately showed his fangs, so to speak, and broke the overdue wedding orgy of loud drunkenness right up. "Actually, no, Damon," Manuel conceded with a wave of his silver hair and liver-spotted hand that almost seemed to have Nosferatu-like nails. "I am usually up this time of night anyway. The closer your body gets to 100, the more your body gives up on sleep anyhow. After all, the big sleep is just around the corner, no?" "The big sleep is just around the corner. Old or young," Damon agreed. After all, a meteor could hit the Earth on any given day, on any given second. The giant space rock, mind you, not the amazing pinball machine that Damon had once gotten for $50. "Seriously? You're not jealous yet?" "Anyhow, a little birdie across the street at the Adirondack Tavern told me that Damon is not interested in beautiful girls, no?" I'm sorry, what?" Damon said, not fully believing what he had just heard. "Yes, as they say you are not interested in these skirts whatsoever, as much as they say you are interested in the flipper ball, no?" "Oh wait, I am sorry. In Europe we always call it flipper, yes? Here you call it pinball. You are obsessed with the pinball, you strange young man, you." Which was technically most certainly true. But what the heck were they saying about him across the road? Damon loved the ladies. They were delicious after all. True, Damon had probably not been laid since Kurt Cobain still had brains inside his head. A very long dry spell indeed. But still, even when Damon was once a priest. Yes, Damon once had in fact been a priest. A very corrupt human priest of the highest magnitude. An investigative bishop, as it were. Even back then, Damon had probably bedded down more milkmaids and maidens than all the Manuels in the world combined. But yes, perhaps maybe he was suffering from a dry spell, almost old enough to drink. So what? Well, I am a fan, Manuel, yes, Damon said, fearing his patience and servile facade might soon be slipping. If you're looking for a game, Damon tried, though he knew it already sounded silly, there's literally a ton of machines up the road and, oh me heck no, Manuel said, sounding as if such a thing was beneath him. Quite the opposite, actually. My third son, you see. He lives up on Long Lake, and he has this pin he is trying to get rid of. Okay, Damon said, sounding slightly bemused, but no longer feeling old-school cordial anymore. Yes, and fortuitously, all you have to do is pick it up tomorrow, and it won't cost you a penny. He will give it to you for free, I think, which is the best price of all. But there is one minor catch. Well, of course there is, Damon thought. When is there not a minor catch? Has this guy not heard of haunted houses? It has to be picked up tomorrow during the morning, as it were. The morning, Damon gasped. Along with popes and picket fences, mornings were one of the things Damon dreaded the most. Why does it have to be tomorrow morning, Manuel? I work at night, as you can clearly see, and I clearly sleep during the day, which was 100% true. Thank God Damon lived in an age where he no longer had to lie about such a thing. Why does it have to be tomorrow morning, Manuel? Why not tomorrow night? Especially when for free meant it was probably just some stupid old EM anyways, and electrical mechanical, and Damon hated electrical mechanicals. Just because something was old-timey like him did not necessarily mean Damon automatically liked it. Renaissance fairs, old-timey bikes, and saltwater taffy, along with EMs, could all go to hell as far as Damon was concerned. Oh, no, my boy. It has to be tomorrow. You have no idea how lucky you are, Manuel said, giving Damon's chest a used car salesman pat. My son is getting his entire garage demolished tomorrow. It is demolition time, as they say. Nobody says that, Damon thought. To build a new one, and I know he is simply planning on putting it on the curb with the free sign on it, and I think it'll be raining tomorrow, and... Manuel, Damon finally interjected, beginning to feel exacerbated indeed. Manuel, if he keeps it in a garage, in a climate like ours, it's probably already molded from head to toe with a family of rats living in it. The garage is heated and furbished. It always doubled as my son's office to save tax money. He is a screenwriter for television, I am so ashamed. But it is quite a rare pin, I am told. Rare pin, Damon thought, rolling his eyes. What pin isn't rare these days? Okay, Manuel, you got me. Damon fibbed, quite happy that in a second, after he was finally told it was a fireball or a Matahari or whatever, he could finally politely be done with this. And what kind of pin is it? A Dracula. A what? Suddenly, every single Gatorade and Coke bottle, along with Damon's jaw, fell to the ground, as his pupils, along with his testicles, somehow shrank, as his frigid Arctic blood somehow became even more frigid. For the first time since Zool for God's sake, Damon felt a terror creep from underneath his undead spine. Dracula? Manuel said, again a little slower this time, suddenly feeling as if his English was no longer good. But for a moment, it was not like Damon could even hear him anymore anyways. For a moment, Damon was no longer even in the lobby of the Fort William Henry Hotel, or even the current century. Because for a moment, Damon was instantaneously transported centuries back, all the way back to Bram Castle, where a familial creature of the same name as the pin just mentioned was giving him one of the most unholy of dark baptisms indeed. Drink! Drink it, you fool! His maniacal uncle cackled and shouted after finally besting his so-called investigative nephew. His uncle never really sounded much like a Bela Lugosi or a Christopher Lee, but rather more like a Bill Gates Hannibal Lecter that had never gone through puberty, which most people always found surprising, about as much as all historians were shocked to find. That Abraham Lincoln had in fact sounded a whole lot like Macho Man Randy Savage. 7 years ago, I'm gonna snap the South like a Slim Jim! Screaming and wailing and cackling and laughing while all the while simultaneously suffocating young Damon in the blood of his uncle's most recently slit chest, forcing Damon to suckle and drink upon what had to easily be the most awkward of breastfeeding experiences in all of Transylvania history. Drink my blood, my bloodline. Drink the blood of my blood and become one with me. Become one of the living, but not the living. Become one of the night, but not really the night. Become one of the blah, 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 blah. Most people don't know this, but the whole joke around Dracula ever saying the word blah does not come from him ever actually saying the word blah, but rather it comes from the well-known documented fact that Dracula was famous for his inability to ever shut up, even when he was killing you. Blah, 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 blah. It was a voice of such petulant annoyance and terror that Damon still woke up hearing it in his coffin centuries later. Damon? Manuel tried. Damon did his best to snap himself back to the Fort William Henry Hotel in the 21st century. A Bram Stoker's Dracula, huh? Well, yes, I suppose, Manuel suggested. What did he know? Why, yes, a Bram Stoker's Dracula, Damon said, suddenly putting on his always soothing pinball professor hat as he did his best to fix his hair. The BSD made by Barry Osler of Pinbot fame, right after his, Doctor Who, as I believe. Who? Manuel asked. Oh, Barry Osler. And of course he made BSD right before making Popeye Saves the World, which was also designed with his constant artistic collaborator, Python Angelo, who was also of Pinbot fame and was in fact born in Transylvania himself. One of Pinball's most famous real-life artists, whose name was Python Angelo, was in fact born in Transylvania. Look it up. It only sold around 5,000 units at the time and was not even all that popular with customers or with operators upon release. But this could very well be because people were still playing the heck out of Addams Family. But now there are many in the community hailing it as possibly one of Osler's best, even though it has nowhere near the historical impact of a Pinbot or a space shuttle. But to the community, it is most certainly becoming a tournament darling, and, Yes, Damon. That is all very good, Manuel interrupted, rubbing his old clammy hands on his eyes. But I am sorry. I am just too old to pretend I care about such things. Well, why don't I just kill you right now, Damon thought. You annoying old French peasant fuck. After all, it did not matter if Damon had to spend the rest of eternity being an undead bellhop. This did not change the fact that in a world full of peasants, Damon would still, in his heart of hearts, forever be a noble, and a good-looking one, unlike the British. Does that mean you want the pin? Shall I call my son and let him know? I love to call him and bother him in the middle of the night and... Damon? Damon, do you want the pin, Damon? But once again, for a moment, Damon was lost in his own little world and did not reply. Around 3:35 a.m., right on cue, the last of the rowdy and almost completely slurring wedding party guests raided the soda and Gatorade cooler for one final time before calling it a night, finally leaving Damon Hunter and the Fort William Henry Hotel lobby alone to think. For those who drain, for those who work at night while everybody else sleeps during the day, 3:35 to 4:45 a.m. would always be the longest stretch of the 24-hour cycle. As anyone who has ever worked on perpetual midnights will tell you, one cold and barren, seeming to never end, lonely dark hour. If anybody had ever bothered to ask Damon what it was really like to be a creature of the night, Damon would tell them it was exactly like that. Do I want it? Damon again repeated to himself. He had, of course, said yes to the old French frump. After all, how could he not? A free pin, let alone a BSD? For those of you who don't know, the 93 Williams Bram Stoker Dracula pin was in fact based entirely off of the 92 Francis Ford Coppola film of the exact same name that had come out just a year before, starring no less than Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, and Anthony Hopkins, and even Keanu, I know Kung Fu, Reeves. The BSD is also sometimes referenced to be the big shitty drain, having some of the most stunning yet punishing shots around. The Osler ramp has always been a merciless one at that. It had a multi-ball stack-up, the first of its kind, and an actual floating mist multi-ball that magically floated across the playfield like a ghost, which was still easily considered to be one of the coolest toys in all of pinball history. How could anybody possibly ever turn that down? It beat the pants off of his $50 meteor for sure. Raymond, his only human friend, would die of jealousy for sure. The catch, of course, being that he would have to get it immediately after work, and in the daytime no less. En garde, Monsieur Soleil! You know, the sun was never quite as bad as the movies might lead you to believe. The sun was not going to make Damon burst into flames. leaving nothing left of him but ash, but it would most certainly give him an allergic reaction up the wazoo worse than any ginger kid attending Arizona State. The sun could not directly kill him, but it could most certainly leave him vulnerable. And if he were to somehow crash, or get himself into a shooting or stabbing match, or an impalement, Damon would easily bleed out faster than a hypochondriac at a chainsaw convention. This meant that to pull this off, above all else, even more so than his trusted sombrero, his $500 pair of sunglasses, his gallon of sunblock, and his never-ending supply of Claritin D chewables, to pull this off, Damon was going to need a driver. And with human friend Raymond, his Sultan's Arcade pinball compatriot, busy, maitre d''ing at his family's crown jewel bistro over by the Sagamore until evening, this really only left one option, but unfortunately, not only had this option been squatting on Damon's couch, unwanted for the past 5 months, but for the next 2 weeks. Before the moon got close to full, she honestly looked a whole lot more like an extra from the musical Cats, rather than anything that could possibly pass for human. Ash Lviv, you stupid werecat, Damon muttered. But maybe there was a way around this too. After all, nobody believed in anything anymore past their all-encompassing belief that there was nothing to believe in anymore. Nobody believed in anything anymore past UFOs, robots from the future, and Richard Dawkins. It was as ridiculous and as annoying as a foot fetish. But perhaps for once, this could actually work in Damon's favor. After all, other than the occasional nut, just who the heck believed in the creatures of the night anymore? And even if they did, who the heck would ever believe that a werecat and a vampire were out driving in the middle of the day to simply pick up, of all things, a random pinball machine? Nobody would believe that in a million years. That is just crazy enough to work, Damon thought, while hoping that the Netflix-addicted Fuzzy Bee, squatting on his couch, hadn't eaten all of the marshmallows out of his box of Lucky Charms just yet, because, as corny as any of this may sound, Damon was going to need all the luck he could possibly get.